10. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was an American serial killer who murdered, kidnapped, and raped women during the 1970s. He confessed to 30 murders, committed in 7 states. However, the true victim total is unknown and is likely to be higher. He described himself as the most cold-hearted person you'll ever meet. Ted admitted to psychologist Start Norman that his first victims were 2 women in the Philadelphia area. Susan Marguerite Davis and Elizabeth Perry, both 19-year-old, were stabbed to death on May 30, 1969. Their car was found the day abandoned 60 miles southeast of Philadelphia, and their bodies, one nude and one fully clothed, were found nearby woods 3 days later. Bundy received 3 death sentences in 2 trials and was executed on an electric chair in Florida on January 24, 1989. His last words were directed at his attorney in Methodist Minster. He said, "Jim and Fred, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." 9. Ahmad Siraji. Ahmad Siraji was an Indonesian serial killer who admitted to murdering 69 girls and women between 1986 and 1997. His victims, ranging in age between 11 and 30, were strangled after being buried in the ground up to their waists as part of a ritual. He buried his victims in a sugar cane plantation near his home with their heads facing his house, which he believed would give him extra power. His 3 wives, who were sisters, were also arrested for assisting in the murders and helping him hide the bodies. One of his wives, Tumini, was tried as his accomplice and was sentenced to death before it was reduced to life imprisonment. He was sentenced to death by firing squad and executed on the 10th of July 2008. 8. Jack the Ripper. With over 100 victims, Jack the Ripper used to haunt the city streets of London in the late 1880s. The victims, who were primarily female prostitutes, had their throats slit and bodies sadistically mutilated with a carving knife. The killer allegedly sent several letters to the London Metropolitan Police, which taunted officers about the gruesome acts. Even after several manhunts and investigations, the case remained unsolved. The case was closed in 1892 due to inconclusive evidence. The removal of internal organs from at least 3 of the victims led to speculation that their killer could be a butcher or a surgeon, since he had great knowledge of human anatomy. 7. Tsutomu Miyazaki. Tsutomu Miyazaki committed several hideous acts of crime, including abduction, murder, and even necrophilia. One of his many hideous acts includes drinking the victim's blood and eating some body parts after killing them. He often preserved his victims' body parts as his trophies, gaining the name Human Dracula. After his grandfather died in 1988, Tsutomu Miyazaki got depressed, which fueled his atrocious acts. He even sent postcards to his victims' families describing his gruesome actions and taunting them. Miyazaki was arrested in July 1989 for the murder of 4 young girls and sentenced to death in 1997. 6. Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer, also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, was an American serial killer and sex offender who killed and dismembered 17 men and boys between 1978 and 1991. Many of his later murders involved necrophilia, cannibalism, and the permanent preservation of body parts, typically all or part of the skeleton. Although he was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, schizotypal personality disorder, and a psychotic disorder, Dahmer was found to be legally sane at his trial. He was convicted of 15 of the 16 homicides he had committed in Wisconsin and was sentenced to 15 terms of life imprisonment on February 17, 1992. Dahmer was later sentenced to a 16th term of life imprisonment for an additional homicide committed in Ohio in 1978. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was beaten to death by Christopher Scarver, a fellow inmate at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. 5. John Wayne Gacy. John Gacy was an American serial killer and sex offender who raped, tortured, and murdered at least 33 young men and boys in Norwood Park Township, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. He became known as the Killer Clown due to his public performances as Pogo the Clown, person as he had devised prior to the discovery of his crimes. Gacy committed all of his murders inside his ranch-style house in Norwood Park Township. Typically, he would lure a victim to his home and dupe him into donning handcuffs on the pretext of demonstrating a magic trick. He would then rape and torture his captive before killing them. 26 victims were buried in the crawl space of his home, and 3 others were buried elsewhere on his property. 4 were discarded in the Des Plaines River. He was sentenced to death on March 13, 1980, and was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center on May 10, 1994. 4. Luis Garavito. Luis Alfredo Garavito Cubillos, also known as the Beast, is a Colombian serial killer, sex offender, pedophile, and necrophile, beginning a series of torture rapes on minors aged 6 to 16 in the autumn of 1980. Garavito was estimated to have raped and tortured a minimum of 200 minors, making him the most prolific serial killer in modern history. Apprehended on the 22nd of April 1999 for the attempted rape of 12-year-old John Ivan Sabagal, Garavito was held under suspicion for several months until confession on the 28th of October 1999. The judicial body ruled that all Garavito's sentences total 1,853 years and 9 days in jail. Garavito is currently serving his sentence in a maximum security prison in Valledupar in the department of El Cesar in Colombia. He is held separately from all other prisoners because it is feared that he would be killed immediately. 3. Harold Shipman. Harold Frederick Shipman was an English general practitioner and serial killer. He is considered to be one of the most prolific serial killers in modern history, with an estimated 250 victims, while working as a popular British physician. He began his murder spree in 1972 and killed over 70 people in his first practice. The number of victims almost doubled at the second practice. His victims were mainly elderly women. On the 31st of January 2000, Shipman was found guilty of murdering 15 patients under his care. His last victim gave him away as her autopsy revealed high levels of diamorphine. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order. Shipman died by suicide by hanging himself in his cell at HM Prison Wakefield, West Yorkshire, on the 13th of January 2004, aged 57. Shipman, who was nicknamed Dr. Death and the Angel of Death, is the only British doctor to date to have been convicted of murdering his patients, although other doctors have been acquitted of similar crimes or convicted of lesser charges. 2. Alexander Picheskin. Alexander Picheskin, often called the chessboard killer, is a Russian serial killer. He used to target homeless men and murder them. Alexander lured them into his home with vodka and killed them with blunt weapons. Most of his victims had signs of repeated hammer blows to the back of their heads, and empty vodka bottles were inserted into the gaping skull wounds. He aimed to complete 64 murders, the exact number of squares on a chessboard. However, he was caught and is currently serving life imprisonment for the crime of killing at least 49 people. 1. Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez, or the Night Stalker, was a prolific American serial killer with 15 murder victims and several cases of torture. After having developed epilepsy since childhood, he became a heavy drug user and started believing in Satanism, which was an impetus for his crime. Initially, he started with home invasion and theft, but it soon turned to violence. His first murder victim was an old lady, whom he had sexually assaulted, stabbed, and killed during a burglary in her place. The judge who sentenced him commented that his actions showed cruelty, callousness, and viciousness beyond any human understanding. Not having reflected on his crimes, Richard Ramirez passed away from B-cell lymphoma while awaiting his execution. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and keep an eye out for new videos, which are uploaded on every Friday.